Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Abacus Next Free Training Tuesdays webinar. This week, we're going to be focusing on the powerful document management feature within Amicus Attorney, and we're going to cover the basics in regards to setup and taking advantage of all that this feature can offer you and your practice. My name is Darren Juby, and I'm a product trainer here at Abacus Next, with my focus being the Amicus Attorney product line. As always, if anyone has any questions at all during our session today, please do feel free to utilize the questions field here in GoToMeeting. And time permitting, we will get to answering them towards the end of our session. And if not, please do include your email address as well, and I'll happily follow up afterwards to provide you with the information that you're seeking. We have a lot of information to cover today, so without further ado, let's begin. So just a brief agenda of what we're going to be covering over the course of the next hour, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about specifying document settings for the firm. And in doing so, we're going to explore user-managed versus Amicus-managed modes for your document management. We're going to do an overview of document management. We're going to do some setup for document management. We're going to talk about shared and managed locations. We're going to talk about your document assembly templates location. We'll also touch upon email attachments and full text indexing, both the Amicus indexing service and as well we'll touch upon the Microsoft indexing service, and I'll give you guys some important information as it pertains to both of those indexing services. And of course, like I said, time permitting, at the end of our session, we'll get to following up with any questions that have been arisen. So with all of that said, let us begin by talking about specifying document settings for the firm. There is a little bit of theory that we've got to take care of here before we get into the practical side of things here. Now, documents and research can be associated with your Amicus data, regardless of format, directly from all Microsoft Office applications. That would include Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Outlook, and from WordPerfect or Adobe Acrobat Reader. As well, external documents can be attached directly to your Amicus files, contacts, and emails. Documents can also be generated from within Amicus, from your files and your contacts, based upon the firm's document assembly merge templates. Search functions include the ability to search document details, as well as the full text of the documents themselves. It is important to properly configure Amicus Attorney to take full advantage of all of these features. However, before we can ensure that we are correctly set up to take advantage, we must first discuss and make sure that we understand the basic concepts and terms which will in turn allow us to do so. So first, let's talk about the differences between user-managed and Amicus-managed modes when it comes to your document management. So, like I said, it is best to determine which level of document management will best suit the needs of your firm based upon the following information. So let's begin by talking about user-managed mode. This mode gives firm members the flexibility to individually manage their documents. Documents attached to Amicus records can be saved to any location the user prefers. It also supports an embedded Windows Explorer view within the file details dialogues for ease of reference to network folders that are relevant to a specific file. This mode does not, and I want to stress the not portion of this statement, this mode does not guarantee accessibility by all firm members. However, if your firm or individual departments utilize designated network locations for the sharing of your documents, each user can specify that location relative to their individual workstation in their preferences. And you can set a default for this preference in the firm settings, which will be automatically assigned to any new users that you add to Amicus Attorney from that point moving forward. Now, the alternative is Amicus Managed mode. This mode provides an always accessible solution. It is ideal for firms that desire greater control of document location, accessibility, and document versioning. And something to note, document versioning is supported only on documents that are associated with a matter file. Editing is controlled by enforced check-in and check-out functions that will protect it and allow users to track who is working on a document. Now, one thing that I might add, Sorry to be interrupted here, folks. I do see that Donald has a question. Donald, you should only be seeing a Free Training Tuesdays document management basics screen right at the moment. There is no video just yet, but do note that I will be moving off of that screen into Amicus Attorney itself here very, very shortly. So rest assured there's no problems as of yet anyways. Now, one thing that I did want to mention as well, folks, and give you guys an example. This is a good example I use in many of my training sessions when we're talking about document management and the differences between user managed and Amicus managed. So I'll give you guys a scenario. Let's presume that one of you has a laptop that you work on in the office. And when you're in the office, your laptop is connected to the network. You log into Amicus Attorney and all is good. So what happens when you save a document to your local C drive on that laptop? And let's presume that we're using user managed mode for document management in Amicus Attorney. So you save that document locally to the C drive on your laptop. You associate it to a file in Amicus Attorney, and all is good. As long as you're in the office and on the network, others are able to access that document. But what happens if you take your laptop out of the office? It's no longer connected to the network, and it's no longer available for the rest of your users. Well, if they go to view that document, they're not going to be able to access it because the server will not be able to find it as it resides on your laptop and your laptop's not connected to the network and it's with you wherever you are. So that's one pitfall, if you will, of using the user managed mode if you're not using a central location to save all of your documents. Whereas Amicus managed mode forces you to use a central location. You as the administrator will set that as you're configuring things. And we'll go through that as we move along in our session. But I just wanted to give you guys an example of something like that, as real world as I could possibly think, to give you a little food for thought on that side of things. So as I was saying here, before I went off on that little tangent about the example, as an Amicus administrator, you can choose the option to designate Amicus to be in charge of managing your Amicus documents, that being the Amicus managed mode. This will result in all documents that are associated to your Amicus files being automatically uploaded to the firm's designated managed documents location. Now, by default, the following folder on the Amicus application server is the shared documents folder. It's created at the time of installation, and it's shared out at that time as well. Of course, you can use a different folder, but that one's available, and like I said, that is the default one that's created. You may choose to use this default location for your managed documents or designate a different location. Although this location can be on a different server, please note that the full text searching can be performed only on documents that reside on the Amicus Attorney application server. Now, when you're using Amicus Managed mode, Amicus Attorney will automatically create folders and subfolders when it's required. In Amicus Managed mode, the following are examples of how documents will be handled. So let's say that a document is assigned to a file, or both a file and a contact. Whenever that document is edited and checked in, it becomes the new current version, and the original one will remain accessible as a prior version. Lisa, just like I was saying to Donald, that is what you should be seeing right now. I haven't moved over to Amicus Attorney just yet, so that splash screen is what you guys should be seeing at the moment. Same for you, Rick. We are going to be moving off of it in just a few moments here, folks. Now, another example would be documents that are assigned only to a contact. Whenever a document is edited and checked in, it simply will replace the old or original document. So just to summarize all of that, versioning is really going to be only available when you're in Amicus Managed mode and it's associated to a file. If it's only associated to a contact, we don't have versioning. It's only on the file. Now, if your Amicus database already contains document records that point to computer files on your network, then upon enabling Amicus Managed mode, which we're about to demonstrate here in just a few moments, those documents will be physically moved to the default documents location, and the location paths will be updated in the Amicus records. So let me get off this splash screen here now and hopefully alleviate any concerns that we're not seeing anything here, folks. So you should all now be seeing my Amicus Attorney Office module, my home screen here. And so now that we've discussed some of the basic information and considerations in regards to our document management, let's now take a few moments to review how we would go about implementing it. So to customize document management, like I said earlier, you would need to complete the following. You would log into Amicus Attorney as an administrator, which I have done here. And we know that because I have this administration section available to me here in my navigation panel along the left. If I was not an administrator, I would not have this area available to me or any of these options. Once we've done that, under administration, as the administrator, we're going to select firm settings. And of course, our firm settings are global or firm-wide settings that will affect all of our users. So once we've done that, underneath documents here, we want to click on management, like so. Now at the top of this dialog is a drop-down that will be displaying the firm's current document management selection, either user managed or Amicus managed. Now in my case, and I'll apologize if you guys can't see the faded grayed out text here, but mine is telling me that it's let firm members determine the location of saved documents, and in parentheses it's user managed. So I'm currently on user managed mode. Now something else to take note of here, folks. If you have an on-premise installation of Amicus Attorney, so you've got your own server in-house and everything is installed in your office, then by default you'll be on user managed mode unless you've changed it already. If you're an APC installation, so in our Abacus or Amicus private cloud, depending on how you want to refer to it, then the default is Amicus managed mode. So those are just some things to keep in mind as well here. And now, when it comes to user managed or Amicus managed, to determine and implement the firm's preferred choice of document management mode, well, what we do, you'll note that we can't really click on that, but there's a configure button right here to the right of it. And so what we would do is we click upon that configure button. So now that we've covered a basic overview of document management here, let's now move along to the setup portion of things. So to make it easier to transition to Amicus managed mode, a wizard will quickly create a sophisticated folder structure for reuse on your matters. It also facilitates the option to rescan for documents that may not have been accessible to the server when the firm first made the move to Amicus managed. So kind of going back to that example I gave you guys earlier about the laptop. So let's say that rings true in your firm. There's some users on laptops, and perhaps they're out of the office with those laptops right now, and your administrator has decided to move you guys over to Amicus managed mode. Well, rest assured, once those laptops are back in the office and connected to the network again, if there's any documents on there, you can simply come in here and do a rescan to make sure that you've caught any that you might have missed on the first go around. So let's go ahead and go through the workflow of enabling Amicus managed mode. As you'll see right now, I am currently on user managed. So if your firm would like to enforce more strict controls over the location of documents and versioning control with the check-in and check-out feature, then you'll want to enable Amicus managed mode. And as I stated earlier, unless you're on APC, the default is user managed mode. So to begin, we've logged into Amicus Attorney as an administrator, we've gone to firm settings, and under documents, we've selected management, and we've clicked on the configure button here. So we're already well along our way. So you'll see that when I do click on that, I get my document management setup dialog here. My options are user managed, Amicus managed, and the World Docs link. Well, the World Docs link is a third-party, is a link with a third-party program that World Docs handles all document management for you if you're using that option. But we're going to do the Amicus managed mode setup here. So we're going to select that radio button like so, and then we will click the next button like so. Now, the following fields are displayed, and you'll see that a UNC path is recommended, so we can specify the computer name and full path in here. So what we'd want to do is click on the Browse button, and because we want to use a UNC path, what I usually will recommend to people is go down to the network option and expand that. There's my Amicus Attorney application server, so I'm going to expand that. And there is my shared documents folder right there. So let's select that. And so there you'll see I've got my UNC path. It's 2/, my server's name, /shared documents. And I will check off the box to enable indexing of the document repository. So we'll click next again here. And so the next screen I'm presented with is how I want things. Felipe, to answer your question, yes, we can set that path anywhere, such as a shared drive. But like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that that drive actually points to a location on the Amicus application server if you want full text indexing to be enabled and be successful in doing so. If you're not so worried about the full text indexing for sharing and stuff like that, well, then you can have that location anywhere on your network and just point Amicus to it. But do keep that in mind from an indexing perspective. And yes, of course, the files are accessible outside of Amicus Attorney. We're simply pointing to a folder structure at this point. So those documents will be accessible wherever you've told it to save them. You're quite welcome. So now you'll see that we've got our options here. All Amicus Attorney documents will be accessed from the firm's document repository with check-in and check-out controls. And as far as the document import process is concerned, do we want to move all the documents to that location, or do we simply want to copy them all to that location, thus leaving the originals where they were? But this way, all the pointers are updated in Amicus Attorney to point to the new location wherever we've told it to go. So I'm going to select the option to copy, and we'll click Finish to complete the process. You'll see that I've gotten this prompt here telling me I've chosen to keep all documents in their original location as well as upload copies to the firm's document repository on the Amicus server. This may result in unnecessary duplication. All the documents accessed through Amicus will use the document repository. Changes made to the documents in their original location will not be reflected in Amicus Attorney. And of course, the following process can take some time depending on the number of documents to be copied. Are we sure that we wish to proceed? We will say yes on that. Now, of course, in my scenario here, I didn't have a lot of documents to be worried about. So I can simply say OK on that, and that's completed. Now, there's a few other caveats to keep in mind here. Let's presume that that scenario arises like what we were talking about earlier, where the laptops were out of the office and now they're back. Well, in the event that any documents were not originally accessible at the time of setting up Amicus Managed Mode, you simply need to run through the setup wizard a second time, or multiple times if necessary. So to do that, we would simply go back to here. You'll see that it now shows Amicus Managed. We would go to Configure. Yeah, we'd say Next again. We'd just simply click Next again, and we would do Finish again, and that would do a rescan, like so. Carolyn, I see that you're getting an error whenever you do anything in document management. You're getting an error. The only thing I can really suggest to you on that front, Carolyn, I'm unfortunately unable to really offer much assistance in that regard. You would have to reach out to our technical support team and have them take a look at that. They'll be able to remote in and determine what is causing the error and what needs to be done to resolve that for you. No problems. Thank you. Okay. Moving along here. Now, of course, after you have set up Amicus Managed Mode and your users have had time to experience it, you can always decide to undo these changes and revert back to being under User Managed Mode. Now, something to take note of. This will not move the documents back to their exact locations prior to the move to Amicus Managed Mode. When setting up for Amicus Managed Mode, the documents are all placed into a central location accessible through Amicus Attorney. When you're reverting back to User Managed Mode, you can choose to move a document anywhere you want. If you choose the copy option, this may cause some confusion as the original documents are still in place, but the document profiles in Amicus Attorney will be pointing to the new shared documents path. To begin the move back to User Managed Mode, we would simply go back to Firm Settings here, go to Management, click on our Configure button, and we'd simply select the option to go back to User Managed, like so. Again, we can point to our shared documents location and click Finish. So as you can see, we've chosen to move from Amicus Managed to User Managed. This will download all of the firm's documents to that shared location. This will also disable the check-in and check-out controls. And of course, it may take some time depending on the amount of documents we've got to go through. But I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't show you guys both options here, going to the Amicus Managed and then going back to User Managed. So that's how you would do that. And of course, once we've finished up, we simply click OK to complete the process. And of course, best practice is, whenever you've made any changes like this, if you've done it during business hours, suggest to your users that they quickly log out and log back into Amicus to make sure that those changes take full effect for them. If you've moved, to answer your question real quickly here, Rick, so if you've moved, so you've switched to Amicus Managed mode and you've moved the documents over there. Your old hierarchy will still contain all the documents that were not entered into Amicus Attorney. That is correct. And then if you decided to drag and drop them in later on, it will simply place them, like make a copy of them essentially in that Amicus repository. Your original will stay wherever you've saved it originally, but the copy that Amicus Attorney is accessing and pointing to will be located in that Amicus repository, that shared documents folder, or wherever else you may have pointed it to use. I hope that answers your question. You're quite welcome, Rick. And one thing I do want to get into before we move too far along here as well, folks, I feel that I would be, while I can't demonstrate it, I feel that I would be kind of ignorant almost to ignore it altogether. So there is the World Docs link here. And while I won't go into too much detail regarding this during this webinar, please do note that the ability to link with World Docs for document management does exist. And if or when a firm decides to enable the link with World Docs, well, then no document controls are necessary within Amicus Attorney. So to begin that process, you would come back in here where we are, Firm Settings. Under Management, we would select Documents, and we would click on the Configure button, and we would select the World Docs link option. Once that World Docs radio button is selected, a Configure button will appear to the right of it, as you can see here. And then the next arrow changes to Finish, as you can see. So we would go through the Configure options, and then once done, we would click Finish. Now this is disabled until the Setup Wizard has been completed. And then you return to the Document Management Setup dialog. At that point, you would be able to click Finish. So basically, once you click on this Configure button, that Finish button is not available until you've completed the configuration. Now, if and when a firm decides to disable the link with World Docs, they could do so simply by returning in here to Firm Settings and selecting Management under Documents, clicking the Configure button, and simply making the choice of either User Managed or Amicus Managed. When doing so, that would simply disable the World Docs link at that point, and then we would go through the configuration of it and proceed from there in the workflows that I've already showed you. Now, something to take note of, if you are using the World Docs link and you move back to either a User Managed or Amicus Managed, no actual documents will be moved, and the documents are not copied out of World Docs either. So you would have to manually take care of any reassociations in that regard. And then, of course, once finished, you would click Finish to return back to our firm settings. Now, we've talked about specifying a document's location. Let's go through that a little bit more. So we would navigate to our firm settings, and under Documents, we select Management like we have. Now, depending upon the document management mode that you have selected, if it's User Managed, so if you wish to support full text document searching, The shared documents location, like I said earlier when we were talking about Felipe's questions there, that folder, whatever location it is that you select, if it's not the shared documents folder, it must be on the Amicus Attorney application server. And of course, we've already demonstrated how we would specify the path to that by going into configure, and whether it's user managed or Amicus managed, we point to the path accordingly. Now, some additional tips here, though, in regards to all of this. An important security tip. Make sure that you've had the appropriate Windows security rights set on the Manage Documents folder to ensure that restrictions are enforced and managed by Amicus. To do this, you can simply right-click on the folder within Windows Explorer and choose Properties on the shortcut menu that appears, and then click on the Security tab in the Properties dialog that opens up. So for instance, let me just open up a Windows Explorer view here. And let's go to our C drive where that folder will reside. So if we go into my Amicus Attorney server folder here, there's that shared documents folder. So I would right click upon it and select Properties like so, and then I would go to Security. And that's where we'd be doing all of this. So we'd want to grant permissions to only the Amicus Attorney application server's remoting service. That's the system option here. And you'll see that it does indeed have full control. And one or more Amicus administrators. So for instance, I have myself as part of the administrators group, but you'll also see that I've got my users in there as well as authenticated users. But the administrators, you'll see, also have full control. This ensures that access to the documents will be controlled by Amicus, record assignments, and restrictions. And one thing to note about changing the location. So if you change the location of the Managed Documents folder later, be sure that you physically copy the entire contents of the previous folder to the new one, thus preserving the subfolder structure. Also remember to set your security rights and indexing on the new folder appropriately. So when we're talking about making sure that indexing is set up, we're going to take a look at that here in just a few moments on how that's configured within Amicus Attorney, so you all know. And of course, our default shared documents folder, it's important to note. So that shared documents folder right there. One important thing to note about that, even if you're not going to use that particular location, do not delete, rename, or move that default shared documents folder. Like I said, even if it's not being used by your firm. The reason being is that the Amicus server service itself cannot be started unless that folder is present on the Amicus Attorney application server, and as a result, if you delete it or rename it or move it out of there, users won't be able to log into Amicus Attorney because that server service will not be able to successfully start. And as a general rule of thumb, you should not delete, rename, or move any of the subfolders that are found within this Amicus Attorney server folder. Just to be on the safe side, folks. If I can offer any kind of advice like that, I'm very, very happy to do so. So we're going to move along to the setup of indexing and so forth here in just a few moments, but there's a couple of other things I just want to touch upon, given that we're in the firm settings taking a look at document-related stuff. So let's talk about document management in regards to our document assembly templates location. So document templates developed and maintained from your Amicus Merge templates to facilitate the document assembly feature must be stored in a location that is accessible by the Amicus Attorney application server. This will apply in both user-managed and Amicus-managed configurations. Now, if the document templates folder is not on the Amicus Attorney application server, then you would have to do the following. You'd have to log into the application server as a user with Windows Administrator's group rights. You'd log into Amicus Attorney as an administrator. Ensure that all the users are logged out of Amicus. Then you would navigate to Firm Settings, and under Documents, we would select Management like we've done here. And then at that point, you would identify the document template's location utilizing the location format chosen for the firm. So you can either use, we do recommend a UNC path, but you can use a map drive here as well. Now, if you're using a UNC path, well, of course, it's 2 slashes, the server name, / document assembly templates. If, of course, those document templates are in that folder that was created. Now, if I was to click the Browse button, and because I'm in the tutorial office, I can't do that here, but I'll show you where that folder is located. It's right here. In the Amicus folder, in the Amicus Attorney Server folder, there is the Document Assembly Templates folder. Now as well, if you're using a map drive, so for example, let's say that you've specified the T drive as the Document Templates folder location, then you'd want to make sure it's mapped as the T drive on the Amicus Attorney application server and each workstation as well. UNC, Felipe, stands for Universal Naming Convention. Outside of that, I can't really give you much better of an explanation than that. But to show you, for instance, let's go back to here. And I'm just going to go back to my Amicus Managed again. If I do a browse, if I have it set like this, with the drive letter /Amicus /Amicus document repository, for instance, well, that's either a drive letter or a map drive path, if you will. But if I click Browse, and if I go down here to the network, there's my server. And I want to select my shared documents folder here, like so. This is a UNC path. So you'll see it's 2 slashes, the name of my Amicus Attorney application server, which is trng-aa20 / shared documents. So that is an example of a UNC path. I hope that helps to clarify things for you. But if you're looking for a much better definition than that, Google is our best friend, my good friend Felipe. So I would suggest Googling that, because that's what I would be doing to try to answer that question for you at this point. So, okay. And like I was saying, though, you want to make sure that that map drive letter, if it's a T, for instance, it's got to be mapped as a T drive on the server, T drive on the workstations as well. And one last thing to note in regards to the templates location is, if you change the location of this folder later, be sure to copy the contents of the previous folder to the new one, preserving the subfolder structure, as well as the drive mapping at each computer and the server would need to be changed or updated accordingly to make sure that it points correctly. Now, one last thing I want to mention here before we move along to our discussion and demonstration about how to set up indexing is the document management for email attachments here. So again, in our firm settings under documents, we've got management here. We've got one last field here that's for email attachment types. And as it states, for security purposes, only autosave the following email attachment types. And from here, we can put in those file types. So whenever an Outlook or Exchange email is auto-saved to Amicus Attorney, assuming, of course, that the feature of the Outlook Exchange email link has been enabled, that being the auto-save feature, attachments on that email might be automatically saved as documents. Now, to help prevent undesirable attachments, such as graphic signatures or exe files, as an example, from being saved, this is where you would go to take care of this. You'll see I've got PPT in there, XLS, doc, PDF, WP, MPP, and text, and so forth. Taryn, to answer your question, no, we would have to put doc and docx here respectively. You're quite welcome. And Rick, just briefly give me a second here to take a look at your question and see if I'm able to answer this for you. Tell it to move your documents. I'm not really sure how to answer that question for you, Rick. that might be something that you're best served to talk to our technical support guys about. Admittedly, that's not something off the top of my head that I would be able to answer without doing a lot of research for you. I think that would be your quickest option of getting an answer. But do send an email to training@abacusnext.com if you're unable to get an answer from support in regards to that, and I'll definitely look into that for you. Okay. I get where you're coming from, totally, Rick, and thank you for understanding on that front. That one's definitely one that's a little bit off base of what I'm used to getting as far as questions in this sort of scenario. But again, like I said, try to reach out to support and see if they can get you that information. And if not, send an email to training@abacusnext.com, and I will follow up with you accordingly once I've had time to do the research and get that information for you. So what we were talking about, the email attachments here. So like I was saying, to help prevent undesirable attachments, such as any graphic signatures or exe files from being saved, we would log into Amicus Attorney as the administrator. We'd come in here to Firm Settings. Under Documents, we would select Management, and we could add to this ongoing, as you can see, list. So, and Taryn, just so you can see the example here, we've already got doc there, so we would do docx, and then probably xls, x for Excel newer version files and so forth, probably the same for PPTX and so forth. So we would have to add those in there. And then something else to note here, folks, is .msg attachments, such as if you receive an email in Outlook with a forwarded email attached to it, it's going to show up as a .msg. Those attachments cannot be saved within Amicus Attorney. You can save them locally on your hard drive and so forth, but you can't save them right in Amicus Attorney. So the next thing I want to touch upon here before we wrap up our session here is indexing. Now, Amicus Attorney provides support for full text searching of your documents that are associated with your files and your contacts, or that are referenced by any library pages. To facilitate this feature, an Amicus administrator can configure the Amicus indexing service, and I will discuss that as we move along here in a few moments. Now, whenever documents are added to the indexed folders or their subfolders, either directly or via Amicus Attorney, they will be automatically indexed. As well, whenever documents are removed, they get automatically de-indexed. Now, the following formats can be indexed. For Word, any .doc, .docx, .docm, .dot, and .docx files. For Excel, we've got our XLS, our XLSX, XLSM, and XLSB files. For PowerPoint, it's the PPT, the PPTX, and the PPTM files. For Outlook, like I was saying, .msg files, they can't be saved, but they can be indexed under 64-bit versions of Windows only. So keep that in mind. WordPerfect, your WPD files. Adobe Acrobat, those are our PDF files. Rich text format, so RTFs. Text, which are our TXTs. Hypertext markup language, which could be HTML or HTML extensions. Extensible markup language, which of course is our XML files. And any comma-separated values files, our CSVs. If you're running in a 64-bit version of Windows, then your CSV files can be indexed as well. Now, there's iFilters to keep into consideration with all of this as well. Amicus will automatically install the iFilters needed by your indexing service to support the searching of Microsoft Office and WordPerfect documents. For full text searching of any PDF documents, you would need the appropriate Adobe iFilter, depending upon which version of Windows or Windows Server is running on your Amicus Attorney application server. If it's a 32-bit version that you need, simply install it, and the 32-bit simply install Adobe Acrobat Reader on your server, and the 32-bit iFilter is automatically installed as part of that. But if it's a 64-bit version of the iFilter that you require, then what you would have to do is go to Adobe's website, adobe.com/support/downloads, and in there do a search for the 64-bit iFilter, and you'd be able to find it and download it and install it from there. Now, to support the full text searching of our documents that are associated with files and contacts or referenced by our library pages, we mentioned earlier that you would need to configure the Amicus indexing service. Now, the Amicus indexing service is recommended, especially if your server is running a 64-bit version of Windows or Windows Server operating systems, and it is the only choice for firms whose Amicus Attorney application server runs on Windows 8.x, Windows Server 2012, or anything later than that. A non-recommended alternative, which is usable in other cases, is the Microsoft indexing service, and I'll touch upon that a little bit later on here in this session. During normal day-to-day workflows, new documents might not get indexed until the nightly automatic indexing runs. That is, if many items are added, either through file or folder type documents, then not all of them might be indexed right away. When adding or removing large numbers of documents, it's recommended that such mass changes be done off hours to keep all of that in mind and allow time for the indexing to take place. So let's take a look and discuss how we would go about the configuration of Amicus indexing service. Well, to configure it, we need to do the following. So again, we'd have to be logged in as an administrator. And we would go to Firm Settings. And under Documents, well, this time we would select Indexing, like so. And now you'll see you've got the two options here. Use the Microsoft indexing service, which again is available only in older versions of Windows, or we use the Amicus indexing service, which is recommended. So we would select the Amicus indexing service, if it's not already selected, of course. And then we can edit the list of folders if we wanted to. So we could add some more folders. So for instance, I might I can't think of anything that I want to add off the top of. Well, you know what? Let's just add the document repository there as well. So I've added that second folder. And so at this point, I can do a refresh. And I will see the contents, and I will see how much has been indexed already. As you can see right now in this location, I've got 100 documents in there. 67 of them have already been indexed. And like I said, you can monitor the progress by simply clicking the refresh button, and we would see this get updated accordingly. Now, this process, like I was saying earlier, should be done off hours or on a weekend perhaps, as indexing is a process-intensive function, and it might cause performance issues for your users within Amicus Attorney. Depending upon the number of documents that need to be indexed, it might be preferable to perform this, like I said, either after hours or on a weekend. Now, reindexing, when we're talking about reindexing, it's another process-intensive function, and it might cause performance issues for Amicus users. Now, I won't initiate that process simply because it will take a while. And what I mean by indexing, Coney, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is that we index the documents so that all of the text within those documents becomes searchable. So then once they're indexed within Amicus Attorney, if we know that there's a certain word or a certain line or phrase within that document that we're looking for, but we can't remember the document name off the top of our heads, we can do a search for it, and it's going to find it because those documents have been indexed. So we're actually searching the content of those documents as well, not just their titles. I hope that is a good explanation for you. You're quite welcome. And now, like I was saying, performing a reindex whenever there's a large number of documents that are added to Amicus by way of separate document records, or when there are many documents included under a folder document record. You should also perform a reindex when any documents are physically copied to the firm's shared documents location through your network. This makes sure that your searches are accurate. So for instance, if we've copied over a bunch of documents to that location, just manually through Windows Explorer, for instance, we'd want to do a reindex. Now, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to cancel. But I'm just wanting to show you here. You'd want to click OK on this and let it go through and do the reindexing. Again, that way you're sure that all the contents of that folder are essentially searchable. And of course, it'll tell you here when your last full reindex was started, and so forth. Now, I did mention the Microsoft indexing service earlier, so it would be very rude of me to not give it a little bit of discussion point here. So as I mentioned earlier, the Microsoft indexing service is available only if your Amicus Attorney application server runs on Windows 7 or lower, Windows Server 2008 or lower. It is recommended that you use the Amicus indexing service instead, especially if you're running on a higher or newer version or a 64-bit version of Windows or Windows Server. Now, due to this, and along with the time constraints, we're not going to be spending any more time on this, but I did want to mention it, seeing as how we referred to it earlier in this particular session. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that has been an overview of our document management basics within Amicus Attorney. If anybody has any additional questions about anything that we've discussed or demonstrated today, please do feel free to submit them now via the question feature, and we'll try to discuss those and get you the information you're looking for. Now, James, to answer your question, the Amicus indexing service, no, it will not work in Windows 7. You should use the Microsoft indexing service if you're running on Windows 7. You could try the Amicus indexing service. I have not heard in a while whether it's worked as well in Windows 7 or not, but I know it was made for the newer operating system, so do keep that in mind as well. You're welcome, James. Now, Rick, in regards to your questions, does document management service encompass the library? Yes, because any documents that you save and associate to the library are going to get stored within that same shared documents location. Jeff asks, we are thinking of moving to Dropbox. Will that work with Amicus documents and indexing? The Dropbox side of things will indeed work with your document management side of things. As far as indexing is concerned, I will have to do a little bit of digging on that, Jeff. Off the top of my head, I don't know 100%, and I don't want to give you misinformation. So please do provide your email address here, Jeff, and I will, or send an email to us directly at training@abacusnext.com in regards to this, and I will follow up with you accordingly. Let me just write that down. J. Crampton at brandlaw.com. Okay, you're quite welcome, Jeff. Thank you, and I will follow up with you. If it's not by end of day today, I will follow up with you tomorrow to provide you with that information. And Katie asks, I had actually been hoping to get info on changing document templates for document generation with my files. Is there an accessible resource for this info, and is it only an administrator who can do this? So to answer your question, in regards to your document templates, Katie, no, it is not restricted to only administrators. Unless your administrator has restricted it through security profiles, all of you have the ability in your Office module to go into Merge Templates like so. You can either edit or create new templates. Now, again, I'm on the tutorial office right now, so these buttons are grayed out on me. But for instance, if I wanted to edit a document template, actually, you know what? We're almost towards the end of this session, so let me just quickly go back out. So here I am in my regular Amicus Attorney office now. So Katie, if you go to Merge Templates like so, if you want to create a new template, for instance, you can simply click the New Template button like so. You can create a new group to store those templates in beforehand if you wanted to. Or what you can do if you want to create a template that's based upon an existing one already, because I noticed that you mentioned that you were looking for information on changing your document templates. So what you could do, for instance, if it was the blank letter Word document template that you wanted to add to, for instance, Rather than editing it, I will never recommend that. I'm a firm believer that if you're going to make changes on something that's static, you're best to make a copy of it first. So what you would be best suited to do is select the template that you want to create a variation of, and then click New Template. As you'll see, you'll get prompted, do you wish to create the new template based upon the selected one? So you would say yes. You would give it a name, determine what group you want it to be a part of, and then you click on Create Template, and it would open up in Word or WordPerfect, whichever word processor you're using, and whichever one you've specified, of course. And then from there, in this case, because I've selected that existing template to make a variation upon it, I'm creating a new template that will already have everything that's included within that one already there for me, and then I can simply edit it as I want to or make whatever changes I want to. So I hope that helps to answer your question, Katie. If you're looking for a little bit more on that, we did do a webinar on document assembly a while back. Back on April the 16th was the last time we did a webinar on document assembly. So if you go to our website, abacusnext.com/webinars, and scroll down the list, you'll be able to watch the video of that previous session. And that will give you a little bit of insight as well onto how you can create and edit templates. About halfway through or so, we take a look at that. And as well, we do have Amicus Attorney training sessions available for document assembly as well, if that's something that interests you and anybody else within your firm as well. And that would be a 1-hour training session strictly dedicated to document assembly. Oh, you're quite welcome, Katie. Does anybody else have any questions before we get to wrapping up here today? Because there is one last little tidbit of information I want to share with all of you. Taryn, to answer your question as well, there is a recording of our document assembly webinar from back on April the 16th. It's on abacusnext.com/webinars. And if you scroll down, you will see a listing for that document assembly session. And if you click the link on that, you'll be able to watch the video on there. You're quite welcome. All right, folks. So let me start concluding things here. That, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, is an overview of document management basics within Amicus Attorney. I've tried to address as many questions for you guys as I can as well. And Jeff, like I said, I will follow up with you accordingly in regards to that. And Rick, do reach out to me at training@abacusnext.com if you're not able to get the information you were looking for from support in regards to your questions about the document folders and stuff. And one last thing I want to mention to you all before we wrap up today is that Abacus Maximus is coming up. For those of you who are aware or who have not already registered for it, I will be one of the speakers there as well, but we have quite a few amazing speakers lined up that are a lot more interesting than I am, such as Aaron Brockovich, for an example. Mr. Forbes is going to be there as well. And so just so you guys know, early bird pricing has already ended. We're past May the 15th, but there was a deal for the Memorial Day weekend. I'm not sure if that's still going on today or not. You'd have to double check on our website or your sales representative for that side of things. But if you do go to abacusmaximus.com and you're looking to register, use the discount code webinar and you'll get $100 off of your registration. So hopefully I will see all of you guys there as well. And if not, well, I will see you guys in our next Abacus Next Free Training Tuesdays webinar, which will be next week. And we will see you guys all there. But thank you all for attending and participating in today's Abacus Next Free Training Tuesdays Amicus Attorney Document Management Basics session. And all of you, please have a wonderful rest of your day today, an even better week and weekend to come.